3 ways to get out of the middle income trap. Part 2. Number 2. Strongly enforced rule of law. Now, Westerners take this concept for granted, and it's because of guilt culture. Guilt culture is the moral intuition that you need to always do the right thing. If you don't, you're a horrible person. Now you know why the West always scolds other countries for human rights violations. But what is the right thing to do? That is where the law comes in. And in the West, the law usually includes protecting rights, protecting human rights, but also, and more importantly for being a wealthy nation, protecting property rights. A Westerner might say, of course what's mine is mine and not yours. But that actually hasn't been the mentality for most of humankind. Most of humankind abided by what we call shame culture, which means that doing the right thing is just looking as good as possible and having the best possible reputation. Which means that doing the right thing is making everyone think positively of you. Pretty much being a people pleaser. That is honor. And if everyone hates you, that's shame. And the best way to get someone else to think positively of you is through gifts, favors, exchanges. And those favors and exchanges become bribes, corruption. And that siphons the wealth from the people because their governments don't have the mentality of, I need to do what's right by abiding by the law. They have the mentality of, I need to make sure that my friends, my family think positively of me. But you might ask, wait, what about the people? Shouldn't you care about what the people think too? But in shame culture, it's very relationship based. It's very based on how well you know the person and how well you trust the person, because trust is earned. So by that logic, you don't know the people, so you don't trust the people. Now, 2,000 years before any Western Enlightenment thinker proposed the idea of rule of law and natural rights, a Chinese philosopher named Mo Tzu had a very similar idea. Mo Tzu says that being good is abiding by the universal standard, the universal law. And that universal law is universal love, as well as any other utilitarian mechanism that will just objectively make the state better. Now, Mo Tzu was very ahead of his time because the dominant ideology was Confucianism, which is based on shame culture, relationships, especially with your family. Mo Tzu counter-argues Confucius by proposing that following the rule of law, the universal standard, is much more moral than just obeying and being loyal to your father. Because what if your father is not abiding by that standard, by the rule of law? And many Confucian scholars pretty much hated on Mo Tzu because of this idea, saying stuff like, if you care about other people more than your own father, you're an animal, which is absurd in modern days. Pretty much, Mo Tzu was shifting the moral good from the father to the law. And that is a very key, important paradigm shift. A paradigm shift that China never did. Until now. You know, had China adopted Moism instead of Confucianism, they might have been able to industrialize 1,000 years before the West. But alas, people would rather obey their immoral fathers than the moral standard. Mo Tzu states in his book 4, Morals and Standards, that those in the world who perform tasks cannot do without models and standards, fa, or the law. And there's no one who can accomplish their tasks without morals and standards. In other words, there's kind of a law for everything. There's the law of physics, there's the laws of economics. And so from this perspective, it's silly to be loyal to a father or to a tribe that won't produce results than being loyal to a law that will. And this actually creates unity because if people are loyal to the law, then the country will be more cohesive instead of being loyal to their own fathers or tribe. And there's going to be a lot of infighting. So what does this have to do with being a wealthy nation? other than the corruption aspect? Well, if you have a strong rule of law and specifically strong property rights where no one can take what's yours unless you break the law, then you're incentivized to own more things and to create more things under your name. Hence, patents and copyright laws, which are a little bit controversial, but they do promote property rights and they do incentivize creators to invent ideas because those ideas won't be stolen. And this actually helps the mercantilist protectionist argument because with strong property rights, that increases innovation, increases technology, and increases exports. And it's this, property rights, and not democracy actually, that is the strongest correlate for being a wealthy nation. Let's look at all the non-Western wealthy nations, like Japan, Korea. Their cultures have a very strong rule of law. Yes, they're also very Confucian, but they acknowledge that abiding by society's laws is the ultimate moral good. You need to be loyal to society first. Singapore also has a very strong rule of law. And even rich countries in the Middle East, you see all the kings acting like dictators and imprisoning and jailing everyone mercilessly. And that might seem like a violation of human rights, and it is. However, going with the logic of rule of law, where the law is absolute and cannot be broken, how else can you make people with a majority of a mindset of shame culture that will always be loyal to their fathers and their tribe first? How can you get them to accept the rule of law? By persuading them? Yeah, just obey this abstract law over your own dad. No, that won't work. Unfortunately, you need force. And this is where it gets tricky. But that's why South Korea had a dictatorship for that long period of time. And same with Taiwan. Because they realized the rule of law has to come first before democracy. But countries like South Korea, Japan, and America have one more thing that makes them so successful and so wealthy. And this is the third secret weapon to get out of the middle income trap. Stay tuned.